Yes, well, Erin can get on that.
Oh, who's Mark Price? Am I writing those names down? Or they-
Yes.
Okay, and what are they?
Mark is on Zoom. He is John's partner.
He's out of town right now.
Oh, okay, so watching by Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
got
didn't
it.
even see you come in. It's like,
Okay, watching by Zoom. Mark Price. Are you gonna have an official opening of the meeting?
I haven't been doing official openings, but
Well, I would like to make a request,
sure, what's your request?
on the minutes that I read from the initial meeting, I wasn't listed as being present.
Really?
Yes,
That's on me. I will change that. How did I miss that?
Did you print out a copy of the minutes?
I
for us?
didn't because
I've got it
my
right here.
printer, as you can see from this.
It wasn't
was
on my cell
malfunctioning.
phone.
That's like,
My name was. Nope, you're not on there.
how did I miss you?
I'm just so
I'm
invisible.
so sorry.
Well, we should probably add that to the
Yeah.
agenda as to approve the minutes.
Right,
Can
and,
we put that on the
Yeah,
agenda?
let's do it first.
okay,
We have it on my phone.
we need to make a correction to the minutes. On the second page, under scheduling. On the bottom paragraph where my name starts, when we discussed that video, you ended with using the word appropriate. It didn't go into the rest of what is said here.
Sorry, I'm putting that part up on here.
It's right here. You ended here. You did this you added to the minutes. So I would like to for that to be taken out. Because that's not what was said. Okay,
Yes, that's what I meant by appropriate inference, but we can change that.
okay. So how do I do that? Just
I'm doing
the
it
minutes?
on the actual document as we go.
okay.
Yeah, so just in the minutes, you would say that you'd like to amend the minutes to reflect. Okay.
Were there any others that we saw? One? All right. I fixed that on the actual document just now, so I'll send that out.
Last I had seen, it was like 125 or 126 cents.
It's
It's on the back.
Back.
Oh,
It says, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It printed funny. I did not have a good time with the
No,
printer
that's okay.
today.
I think I counted 88 on the first page, so. I think, but I might have miscounted that, but. It was a substantial number.
We're good on changes, right?
Mhm.
Everyone? Okay, so next,
Copy mention of each of these communities.
yes. I asked the same question and then I Googled the census.
So you knew we're.
Yeah. So the, okay. The original charge that, Devin had sent was confusing, so there were questions about getting clarification from the select board. So I attended that meeting, watched the video and pulled the meeting minutes to make a general statement, and then Heather, if you want to add on to that after,
When you say the meeting, what
the
meeting?
select board meeting.
The one we just had?
Yes, the
Okay.
last one. So the updated information is the initial committee is not creating a DEI statement. We are researching what a DEI statement is and whether the select board should adopt one. Per Nick Martin, the second stage of the committee would be actually creating a DEI statement. Devin would like the committee to investigate DEI statements and make a suggestion, either as a joint committee or individually. Shannon cautioned against using social media as valuable research. Ken Mink also suggested researching the Vermont League of Cities and Towns for language to use during that second phase. Did you have anything to add on to that, Heather?
Kind of, I mean, I think basically what I got out of it was they just want us to do some research personally and as a group to look into DEI and what it would mean for our town. And the charge that they have on the website now, very clearly, it just says the charge from the Town of Georgia Select Board is that the DEI committee will examine the purpose of a DEI statement and recommend to the select board if such a statement would benefit the town of Georgia. So we're not
Essentially a
necessarily
yes or
creating
no.
anything.
Yes or no, and here's why we believe that.
Mhm.
So then I came up with some questions that I was wondering if we wanted to ask in terms of like research and understanding. First, the overall biggest question is, how do we want to proceed from here? Do we want to research the various towns and their statements, which is why I included the list of all the towns that have approved and adopted the DOI as of October 10th. And then I didn't know if we wanted to see how many of them or who used the standard Vermont Declaration of Inclusivity format, like their basic 3-sentence thing, and who made their own, and whether or not we would recommend to the select board writing our own or using their blanket statement. Then I didn't know if we wanted to hold off on doing a lot of investigation until we are able to talk with Bob Harnish. And ask him.
Isn't he coming on tonight?
No,
Oh, why? What happened?
he was never scheduled for tonight.
Oh, I thought he was.
No, on the agenda tonight is to schedule him.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah,
I misunderstood that.
I did too. I took it wrong too.
I thought he was
coming
on tonight.
no.
Okay.
And then I didn't know if we wanted to explore what the pros and cons were for adopting a DEI statement. I know that, at one point, Bob's information, I don't know that it's this one. The initial email that I had gotten back in August from Bob mentioned that there were grants available for towns that adopt DEI statements. But then I went onto the website last week and it doesn't have any information about it anymore, and it doesn't
Maybe
appear
they
that they ran out of money. Yeah. So I don't know if it's just like a we're too late thing, but I thought that was a really good question to explore the pros and cons around it. And then if there were any benefits at the federal, state, or local levels to having or not having a statement.
I think
Go
it's
ahead.
important that we move forward and not just wait for Bob, because I think that we'd like to get this moving
I
and
agree.
not kind of wait for someone to come, because I'd like to
I
come back with some
absolutely
more
agree.
research.
And I think that if we do that kind of investigative work ourselves before we meet with Bob, we would have better questions to ask him.
I did contact 3 towns. And I thought he was going to present tonight, or I would have typed it up. I talked to Franklin, and I can type all this up for the next meeting if you'd like me to. And in Franklin, she was great. She was really sweet, and she said, we were the first ones to adopt the statement. And she said, the statement comes from us. And how it came to be was one of their select board members was in Maine and saw a similar statement in response to the George Floyd thing. So they adopted it, but adapted it to their own wording, and I can't tell you what that is, because I didn't get that far. And then, I spoke with, St. Albans Town, and they are still, looking at it, figuring out what to do, and then, with Milton, or not Milton, Middlebury, I know they have, adopted the statement, and they've hired a DEI trainer. And, I went to their website, and they have a survey on their website, a very good survey. But the town clerk and I are playing phone tag, so I will keep trying to catch up to her and, find out more.
So in the packet that I shared with you guys, Bob had sent Middlebury's statement,
Oh,
ironically. So we've got that. And I didn't number the pages, so I'm sorry. But it's like,
so I'll type that up for the next meeting. Would you like that? Okay.
I really appreciate that because I have not had time during business hours to make phone calls.
Yeah, I understand.
I bet we all have busy lives.
Yeah,
I know.
sounds like everyone does based on our emails for sure.
Okay, so when is Bob coming?
So that is next if we're not-
Yeah, I think we'll do the next meeting.
Yeah,
If he,
so he's available on November 15th and December 4th.
Okay,
He was open to either of those dates. He would need to attend by Zoom.
Okay.
Which would be, I think, beneficial so that more people can join from the town.
okay, so,
Do we want to do the 15th?
I say, yeah,
Of November,
Yes. So that was our original meeting date anyway.
I think that we need to put out, some,
Yeah.
information out to the public so that we can make sure that people who would like to listen in and,
Yep.
or zoom in.
So that was
about it.
actually on my list of questions was how do we want to let the community know beyond just posting the agenda and meeting warnings?
Make a-
Do we want to come together and approve like a Facebook post that we could share around town?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I don't do Facebook.
I don't
but
either.
That's all right.
no
Do
face.
you want me to write a draft with Heather and then we can all email together and
Sure,
approve it?
sure.
First question.
Yeah.
Also have the special town meeting, you could have a poster there.
Great idea. Yeah.
Because that's on the 7th.
So you're gonna put together a notice and you two are gonna,
Yeah, Heather and I can make drafts of those and then share them with you guys so that everyone is on the same page.
Okay.
I can also make sure that it's okay with the select board that we have the signage at the special meeting, if that's okay, just so we don't.
Oh, sign it.
Yeah,
I was like, the sign in for what?
I don't wanna just like assume that they're gonna be okay with it, although I'm sure that it'll be fine, but I'd rather make sure we're covering all of our bases.
Do you think we might need a larger space?
Yes,
We might, yeah,
maybe, I mean, I know that it's not the town, but if you look at all the town's buildings, they're all small meeting rooms, so it might be best if we see if we can use the school. It'll be big
Yeah,
enough, it is
'cause
still a
none
community
of the other
that is
pieces are
building,
little.
it's still, no issues around that, I think we should look into that. Cause these rooms are small and
Yeah.
we'd have to cut people out, and I don't wanna do that.
do you wanna call Karina and see if it's an option for us?
Yep.
Okay,
so you're talking about the fire department?
no
it's
other
gonna be
town
too
places,
small, I
are-
think.
it's not even available.
So where are you thinking?
Right,
The school.
school.
Okay,
Heather will, call Karina and see if it's even an option.
If not, we're just gonna have to really say, please zoom in and
Yep,
really try to keep us in numbers.
awesome, so I will email Bob tomorrow morning and confirm this with him before we,
Well, that's a good idea.
before we, get too far
Get
into.
everybody together and no speaker.
Yes. He did say he was available and I told him that I would let him know as soon as we had come up with a decision about dates, so. So before the Bob Harnett thing, I just had put the state of Vermont proclamation of inclusion from the governor. That's the really sloppy looking printed right here. Yeah, because my printer loves me today. I just wanted to share it for everyone to be able to take a look at, to see the statewide declaration. And then I also wanted to point out that on the back page of it, number 2, Phil Scott says, let the second week of May be known as Inclusion Week to emphasize these ongoing efforts to make Vermont a more inviting state for all people. We can share this too around for the better printout. Okay, so back to them. The Declaration of Inclusion Standard Statement is in the packet from Bob on page 2 towards the bottom. And their blanket statement is the town of
Wait a minute,
blank.
where is that?
The big packet, flip it over to the other side. I printed something.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not finding it. Oh, wait,
this, yeah, so this was just emailed to me at 3 o'clock today, but I can send them to Cheryl
Yeah.
and have it posted.
Flip
It's, I have one extra copy. If anyone wants to take a look and pass around, because Gracie not here. But yeah, I'm gonna email to Cheryl and we can get it posted because it's really good information for the. before the meeting.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's from VT Declaration of Inclusion.
Oh, yeah, I've
Network.
seen that.
Yeah.
I wondered about your.
Yeah, this is straight from Bob. I just put it into a grid, so it was easier for me
Great,
to
thanks.
follow. So the town of blank condemns racism and welcomes all persons regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender identity, or expression, age, or disability, and wants everyone to feel safe and welcome in our community. As a town, we formally condemn discrimination in all forms, commit to fair and equal treatment of everyone in our community, and will strive to ensure our actions, policies, and operating procedures reflect this commitment. The town of blank is and will continue to be a place where individuals can live freely and express their opinions. And yes, that was created by the town of Franklin in 2020. And so that's been their standard. My hope is that we can all take a look at it and come up with ideas and questions around it for Bob when he comes. And also consider whether our recommendation to the town would be to use their blanket statement or to encourage the select board or any ongoing committee that they assign to write their own. Any thoughts, questions, comments? So also in the packet, the first page from Bob is like the overview of the Declaration of Inclusivity Initiative. So it's got the background information, the
Where are you
intent,
now?
first page,
Okay.
just a basic overview.
Okay.
The intent of the inclusion, the goal statement, which I thought was important. So their goal statement is to have Vermont municipalities adopt and implement a declaration of inclusion. Adopt means formal approval by the municipality's governing body, and implement means the enactment and furtherance of plans, policies, programs, procedures, and relevant training which support and advance the intent and spirit of the declaration. I wanted to highlight that because I think that there was some confusion when the committee was first discussed, not us, but with the select board and the town conversation around whether signing the declaration would be it, or if there needed to be ongoing community activities, events, education, anything like that.
Because the select board already voted against
The
having,
last select board did, yeah.
the last.
Yep, so it was a year ago.
Previous one.
Yeah. So Bob's initial email to me back in August was that the expectation, if we use this blanket statement from the town, would be that there would be ongoing opportunities for education and activities for everyone to participate in and learn.
Could you restate that?
The expectation, he didn't use the word expectation, but the understanding, if a town signs their blanket statement, is that there will be ongoing education and activities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
From whom? From us? From
From
whatever
The
community
select
adopts
board,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it would fall on the select board in our case, unless they appoint an ongoing DEI committee. And
And what
Bob,
was it? I'm sorry, it falls on the select board for what?
to follow through with those kinds of activities and trainings, or plan, not, they don't have to.
To follow through with a plan if they adopt this?
Yeah.
Okay, the one question I have, if I could just write this down.
Of course.
You know, in reading the declaration, where is it?
Page 2.
Okay, thanks. Okay, when you read the declaration, regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender, identity, or expression, age or disability, and wants everyone to feel safe and welcome in our community. You already read it, okay. They use the word, here it is, commit to fair and equal treatment of everyone in our community, and will strive to ensure all our actions, policies, and operating procedures reflect this commitment. And then up here, Bob Harnish uses the words justice and equality. And equality and being equal are two different things.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not sure that I'm following.
Sure. I guess for me, the simplest way to explain it is, let's say you have letter A and you have letter B. And they're both applying for the same job. And nobody knows who letter A or B is, but one is more qualified than the other. So letter A is selected based on what letter A can do. But with equity, that isn't necessarily the case, that letter A or B isn't necessarily chosen based on their
knowledge.
qualifications. It's based on there being letter B. Am I making sense?
Mhm. I think, I'd like us to not dig too deep into it, because even in Bob's presentation, there's a lot of inconsistencies. So he has an agenda that he's pushing statewide. And there's about 126 towns that have signed on to that. Apparently, they've got different DEI statements. This just might be me, but I'm hoping that this committee can limit our work to following the select board's charge and not go too far beyond that, because I don't think that's this committee's job. I think you could take this and pick apart definitions and words all day long, and there are some inconsistencies in some of this writing just in reading it. Currently, the population in Vermont is static and declining. That's one statement here. And then 4 sentences later, it talks about people are moving to Vermont and bringing in new jobs, new skills and capabilities. So you can't have it both ways. They're either moving out or they're moving in. It could be doing both, but we're either going up or we're going down in population. That's just a mathematical number. So population and census is just math. There's no real opinion involved. It's just one day you have 500,000 people, and then you might have 475,000 the next year. there's not really an agenda there, there's not a political statement, it's just raw math. And I think that, I think it's important that we also limit ourselves to the select board's charge, because I feel this is such a broad issue and it affects the entire town really. And potentially, this may need to be decided perhaps, at a town meeting. It's just my thought as a voter and a resident of Georgia. An issue this large, I think it's good to have a committee. And I was picked for the committee, but I think that if we go too far beyond the select board's initial charge, it really becomes an issue that maybe needs to go to the entire town, because then you're really gonna get a representative view about how the majority of the town residents feel on it. Whatever we say and whatever we do here, and we bring back to the select board, ultimately the select board's gonna have to make that decision about whether they wanna adopt a DEI statement. And that's not necessarily reflective of how the majority of town residents feel. And I think that's why many issues, even in the Vermont legislature, end up going to a referendum, because the Senate and the legislature isn't always comfortable passing a law without having to go to a referendum. And I don't necessarily think that's really my opinion. It's just sort of an observation that I've seen over the years, that some issues go to a full referendum because I think the state wants, or the Constitution requires, that the voters, the entire voting population in Vermont makes the decision as opposed to individual.
A handful of people.
Right. So I think we'd be on safe ground if we simply look at this Franklin, Vermont DEI statement, which seems pretty neutral to me.
Me
It
too.
seems like, I don't know. It
Me
seems
too.
pretty neutral to me. And it seems like that's kind of what I try to do in my own life, is just treat people right. And that doesn't seem like a controversial statement to me. If I were gonna be coming down on the side of wanting to have us do it, recommend a DEI statement, I think that one's a pretty neutral one. I've read some from my own research. Some of them the language it can be pretty divisive. And I think that's also important, that whoever decides, if they decide they want to go with a DEI statement, I think it's important that the language is not divisive. It's more, I guess, collaborative.
Is that the first one we read? Was that the one?
Yeah, the
Okay.
second page.
I think it's,
That's
yeah,
what I
it's on the
thought.
second, and I think it's just, it just has the blanks in there, the Declaration of Inclusion.
Yes, okay.
Are we allowed to add?
Sure.
Who was first?
No, you can go first. I just want to make a statement. I think this was the reason that the old select board didn't take on DEI, because they thought it was gonna be too divisive. But guess what, folks? Our world is divisive, and we have got to do something solid about that. We can't be afraid of it. And I feel like people are afraid of that, of making a statement, standing up for something. That's what I'm saying.
Thanks, Carrie.
My question is the charge that you kind of elaborated on it, because sitting here, it looks like you guys are all for DEI. Are we gonna hear the opposition of having one? Like Marty pointed out a video, and it was a very good video, just to watch so everybody hits both sides so that you can actually make an educated decision.
I'll just state on the record, I'm not for a DEI statement, and I'm not against a DEI statement. The reason I came to serve on this committee, and I hope that was the right decision, is I really wanted to try to keep a really open mind. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna just have to vote my conscience, and I could be outvoted. Everybody could vote with me. I might be the odd person out. I'm okay with that.
But are you guys going to show the opposite side of?
So, yeah, my hope is, with the list of the towns that had signed on, we could go through and pick a handful, contact them like Marty has been doing, seeing why and what they did. And then reaching out to towns that haven't done it and find out why they haven't and what their thought process
Are you
is
thinking
too.
of showing her video at one of these meetings? Cause that was a very good video.
So it's social
It's on
media.
other places, we found it on other places, and you, from our state of, or not state, our town posts all our stuff on social media. So
Okay,
what's the difference? I mean, he's a professor.
Is this the public comment section?
No,
no,
I just asked you a
Later.
question.
it's, we had put it on the agenda to put off and decide whether or not we thought that it was gonna be appropriate. And it was not the priority tonight. The priority tonight was to work on scheduling and the charge. So I'm not opposed to showing videos. I have only watched the first few minutes of it, so I'm not willing to make a for or against statement at all. Because I just haven't had time to watch it because I knew it wasn't on this agenda. But going back to what I'm saying is you pick a bunch of these that have signed it. You look at the towns that haven't signed it. You figure out, is there a common denominator as to why they haven't signed it? Or what is the reason that these towns have signed it? And you come to a decision based on that. And the charge is, we can do a group statement to the select board, or we can decide that, hey, I don't know if we're ever gonna agree on the exact same things, which is totally fine. No, I don't think everyone should be agreeing all the time, because it would be boring. But we could also do individual, statements. We could also do like, as a group, we really feel like this is important.
Here's our pros and cons. I mean,
Yes.
that's something that we can do as a group, is put, here's a list of pros and cons, and this
Yeah.
is what we came up with. I personally think, I've only also watched only a few minutes of her video. I didn't get a chance to watch it all. But I'm interested in hearing more about it, and I'm always open to listening to other sides, whether or not we agree with the other side or not. It's listening to it and giving a chance to at least hear it. It doesn't make us decide one way or another just by listening to someone
Yeah.
else speak.
And I think
So-
that where I come from, not politically, but I want to, in everything that I do, and I do see your hand, in everything that I do, I try to make sure that the sources that I get information from are neutral and unbiased. Not saying that yours is unbiased, because I haven't watched the whole thing and I don't know a lot about it. I want to make sure as someone on the committee that it's a neutral source. So if we were to go and click on someone's link, not yours, I don't know anything about it, like I said, but if we were to go and it's like connected to one far left or one far right media source, then that would make me really hesitant as a member of the committee to share it, because it looks very political.
I could
as
tell
an
you,
outsider.
John Stossel is a libertarian, so he's for anything goes. So,
Frank had his hand up, I just wanted to let him have time to see.
Sure.
Yeah, so as an adult, I'm really pretty good at watching videos that are freely available online. If you want to advertise it, that's great. I don't know that I'm up to sitting here with you guys to watch videos that sound boring.
What's the difference of watching Zoom or watching that?
Well, that's, them watching them debate.
Again,
but-
we have to remember that we're here to look at what the committee would like to do.
Right.
Right now, we're not educating the public. That wasn't our charge to educate the public, but the charge is to educate ourselves, and we need to work on what we would like to see as a committee and what we would like to research.
I have a question, if I may.
Mhm.
Do we have any data, any information from the town about issues that have come up related to this
So that's
in our community?
that is later on the agenda, but also a question that Bob had for us. So we definitely can address that and figure out. I don't think that we're gonna find that information from the town itself. And maybe you can speak to this, Bob, with the lack of police coverage and reporting, I don't think that we're gonna find accurate information, unfortunately,
Well, that's law enforcement.
right?
That's maybe, that could be involved in some of these issues, I'm sure, at some point. People getting overreactive and so forth, but, Yeah, I just wanna know what the town has for
Yeah.
information about this being a hot
I mean,
issue or just a.
Yeah, I know I attended, an unconscious bias training last week for work.
What does
and
that mean, unconscious bias?
So it's
I don't know.
generically speaking, there's a really good, speaking of videos, and I don't want to show it, but there's a really good PBS video on unconscious bias that's very neutral. It's called, I forgot what it's called now, but I wrote it down in my training binder. Where they talk about how unconscious bias is not a bad thing. So like I said last week, when I was talking to a few people after the meeting, it could be as little as you go to the grocery store and you go immediately for crunchy peanut butter instead of smooth peanut butter. It could be based on a traumatic experience that you had in your life and your gut reaction to being in a situation related to that experience. It could be you get the warm fuzzies on Christmas morning because you had a really great, fantastic childhood on Christmas, you know, like.
How does it relate to this?
So a lot of folks relate unconscious bias immediately to race. In my experience,
Okay.
my professional experience. And they immediately react because it feels really accusatory. And I totally get that, because when I first started learning about it a few years ago, it almost feels like you're being called a racist or being, you know, called something that you don't necessarily agree with. And it's not that at all. An unconscious bias is built into you and your reactions to experiences, people, different things that have gone on in your life. So,
So,
the
so Jana, this is
Yeah.
Karen. I actually have a good example of that. So unconscious bias is basically intends to bring awareness to yourself that you did not know was there. So for example, if I'm sitting in front of the TV and I see a commercial for, I don't know, a really, really expensive car, and I see people of color driving the car, and I notice that there's people of color driving the car, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, that's really cool that they're showing people of color in an economic situation where they can afford a car like this. So the fact that I saw it made me aware that I had a bias of expecting only white people to be able to afford that kind of thing. So it's a situation that brings awareness to yourself of some learned or inbred bias, some of it from the environment, some of it from your upbringing, some of it from media, where you expect one thing and see something different, and you're shocked or surprised by it. So I'm not sure if that helps at all.
That helps, and I was just gonna take it to the next step is.
Could you just, what you said, could you of some learned after that, what you said?
Either learned or inbred biases. And that could come from the way you were raised. It could come from media exposure. It could just come from the environment that you live in. We all know that Vermont is probably one of the whitest states in the country. So we don't have a very large population of BIPOC people. So we are not used to, I'm trying to say this without it making me sound prejudiced, but we are not used to seeing people of color in the same situations as white people because we've had limited exposure to it. And when we see that and we're surprised by that, or we consciously noticed or acknowledge that, hey, this is kind of cool, that's me discovering a bias in myself that I did not expect to see a Black person driving a Lincoln Continental. I mean, does that make any sense?
Yes, I understand. Do you want me to read back what I wrote to make sure I've got it correct?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
Karen, unconscious bias is awareness to yourself that you did not know was there. of some of it is learned, inbred biases from how you were raised, exposure to the media. We are not used to seeing people of color because Vermont is primarily white. Is that about right?
That is true.
Okay.
That is true. And I think people tend to transfer their own experiences onto other situations. And when it's different from what you have experienced, it surprises you. I think the whole concept with unconscious bias is that you suddenly become aware that you had a different perception than what you're actually seeing in front of you. So when you see a Black family or an interracial couple on a commercial or something like that, it's like, oh, wow, that's an interracial couple. Now, you shouldn't have to notice that. It should be just a commercial. But the fact that you notice it means it's different from your experiences and different from your expectations. So you have a bit of a bias towards what your expectations are. And when they're different from what you have experienced in the past or what you expect, then that is a consciousness that comes to you from that experience. I have a friend who does this much better than me. She actually presents unconscious bias presentations to a lot of the Society of Women Engineering conferences that we attend. But it's called unconscious because you're not aware of it until a situation brings it to your attention. So it's not intentional racism. It's not intentional discrimination. Jana said it's pretty much a good thing. And she's right. It's making you aware that your perceptions don't always apply to every situation. And it makes you a little bit more receptive to things that are different from you.
And then to take that a step farther, Karen, and I know that this isn't like the point of DEI in this committee right now, but once you become aware of that bias, what do you do with it? Do you go to try to learn more about it, why you feel that way, and understand what's going on? Do you just sit with it and know that you have that?
Right.
You know, what are the next steps? That's
exactly.
what they teach in all these trainings. I know that
Yes.
that's not our goal right now, but
Yes.
once you're aware of it, what do you do with it?
Okay.
I think I had some questions.
Yeah, John, I saw his hand first.
Oh, I think Carrie had her hand up also.
I think it was, oh, I was just like, it was for something before, I was just saying like, because the select board had intentionally said to avoid anything with social media, as I mentioned about like
Mhm.
videos for YouTube or anything that's not like, you know, Bob training. No matter what we do here, the select board isn't gonna see that as like a verified source, because they said to avoid social media. That's all.
Thank you. Heather, did I see your hand up?
No, but we did find a video on other means of,
Okay,
just so you know, you
Okay.
can watch it on other means.
I will check out the sources, and like I said, I don't know that this being an educational, like, let's watch videos everywhere is really the intent of the committee as well.
It just shows the other side.
No, and that's what I get. That's kind of why I'm leaning towards why don't we check out these towns that have, check out the towns that
Here's the
haven't.
thing, I feel as if I should apologize because until I watched the meetings this morning, I didn't know, or the minutes from the last meeting, I didn't know that you were a diversity trainer.
I'm
So,
not,
well, you said when you introduced yourself that you were involved with
I'm on
DEI.
various DEI committees, but I'm not a trainer.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so you know a lot more about it than I do. So anyway, this guy, he's a man of color, he's a professor, it's not putting down DEI, it's just explaining his experiences and how he feels it should be looked at in possibly a different way. That's all. I mean, it's it's worth watching, really. It really is.
And I just wanted to clarify, I'm not saying that I think that you came here with an agenda and like brought a crazy wild out of nowhere video to try to influence. That's not what I was saying at all. I was
Well,
just
didn't
saying,
take it that way.
okay,
Cause I've done a lot of research. I've spent a lot of time on this. And, cause it's really important to me, cause I want everyone to feel welcome, but I also really want to understand what's behind this, because you do have some towns that, to be honest, are very leery of it.
no, and I admittedly have watched videos, the pros and cons, and the ones that are against DEI are really eye-opening and make you ask questions. I just am weary about sharing them in this meeting. I didn't know if there was maybe a different setting that we could come up with to share those kinds of things, because like I said, I want to make sure that it's a very neutral source, not saying that yours isn't, because I haven't checked it again, and I know that they're on different
What do you mean by
websites.
neutral?
So if you were to Google media sources and which political stance they kind of lean towards, I like to go right down the middle. So the Associated Press is one that's almost always extremely neutral. And I personally like to stick with those sources instead of, I don't want to name networks and stuff, but I want to stay down in the middle so that I can find facts and not facts with twists. That's my own personal.
Yeah, well, it's just a man and his personal experience. And you can take it in one ear and let it out the other, but I feel in all fairness, it should be shown.
I can appreciate that, and I'm gonna call on Frank because he's had his hand up.
Bob Harnish is someone who does a presentation and then we can interact with him, we can engage with him, we can ask questions. I can't ask John Stossel Jack because he's not here, it's just watching some video. Again, that's something we can do on our own time, and it doesn't seem productive for this committee to do at a committee meeting. That's something you can, if you feel it's appropriate, that's something you can encourage residents to watch on their own time. Because then it'll reach more people that way.
I get what you're saying.
And
I mean,
I'm not saying the video is not of use, I just don't see the point of showing it to us at one of these
because you aren't
meetings.
gonna watch it.
So I'm gonna move on from this at this point because it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere.
You're right.
And I'm gonna go to the questions that Bob has for the committee so we can discuss them and make sure that we have adequate responses for him.
Okay, where are they?
So Bob emailed me 3 questions back in, they're not in the packet, this is something that he emailed me back in August. First one was, when the committee was formed, were the members given a mandate or a job? Yes,
Yeah, we were given a
obviously.
charge.
And so I would.
Do you want me to
email-
write this down? Or do I need to write this down?
I can email you the questions of it, or you can copy them. No, these are just ones that he had sent me and I added to my.
When did he send those?
In August.
I sent it to you. In August.
So when the committee was formed, were the members given a mandate or a job? My response to him would be yes, and to include the charge from the select board, word for word, cut and paste. The next ones are definitely gonna cause conversations, so. Have there been any racial or hate motivated incidents in town? My personal opinion is that I don't feel like we can answer that adequately because 1, there's lack of police coverage and reports overall in town, but 2, my experience has been that a lot of these incidents are very personal and people are not willing to or wanting to publicly share those incidents. So I don't know how you guys wanted to answer that to Bob.
I mean, what does it,
So you're saying, you don't know because you don't think they're reported. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think that there's adequate information
Okay.
to answer that question.
We had talked at a previous meeting about having an anonymous survey. for the town?
Yep.
Because I
Yeah.
think the baseline where the town is.
Yeah, and so that's on the agenda, is to discuss that, bring that back to the table, because we had kind of tabled it last time because we didn't want to go too far without the clarity from the select board. So we can definitely go down that route if we wanted to.
I think that's moving away from what our charge is.
I
think
That's their job
that's
too.
going off on another path, and I mean, while I do wanna hear from the community,
That would be like
think
a
that
phase
that's,
two.
that's taken us down another path, and I wanna make sure we're focusing on what we're supposed to do now, and maybe the next step after we've reported back to the select board would be to do that.
I do feel like, sorry, were you gonna speak? You can go.
Thank you. I'm being quiet and that's unusual. I'm just wondering if any of us at the table here have any firsthand information about any significant number or difficult situations that have occurred in this community.
Absolutely.
You do?
I have had many people in town come to me and share their experiences, but I'm not willing to share those experiences publicly without their permission, and
No,
I'm
of
not
course
willing
not.
to name names. But yes, I have had many come to me.
I'm wondering about the town having any information, direct information
I
about.
can email Cheryl and the select board and we can ask them if they have any information about that before we answer this question.
Because I don't want us to try to come up with a solution for something that isn't a big problem in our community.
Okay.
So Jana, can you share the nature of the problems? Were they racial? Were they homophobic? Can you
Yeah.
share at least that much?
There are several related to race, several that I have experienced. I actually witnessed one at a school event last week.
Between students, you mean?
Between parents and other towns.
Oh,
But that's a whole different story, and it was handled, so we're not gonna dwell on it. There have been many related to sexual identity. I have heard tons and tons of stories about homophobic comments made to people. In my professional experience in the town of Georgia in foster homes, I have been witness to many incidents where some foster kiddos were targeted for being foster kiddos. And I know that that doesn't seem like something that a DEI statement would cover at first glance, but I do think it's really important to.
yes, yes.
It does under socioeconomic.
Yeah.
That's socioeconomic for sure.
And their social status and, you know, being made fun of for, am I going too fast? I'm sorry.
Listen, these are gonna be a mess.
Are you a
I
fast
mean,
typer? Can we bring a laptop next time? No?
I am a better typer, yes.
My impression, Marty, is that I think minutes just have to sort of encapsulate the general idea. I think you're doing great on the minutes.
Thanks, Bob, I'm
I
trying.
think you're, I don't think you need to capture a word for word because it is being
Right.
recorded.
Okay, thank you.
That's
You're
just
good.
a
I'm
thought.
trying.
I'm
You're
not the
doing
chairperson,
great.
Terry.
I know.
I can't recognize you, but, but I can,
Terry.
yeah.
How am I gonna put this? I know that your charge is to come back to the select board with, a recommendation. And how can you make a recommendation without knowing what possible problems there have been in town? How can you say, for instance, if someone's like, no, we don't need it, without knowing what the problems have been? Or vice versa.
And they have to be verifiable.
I don't think
I
they
don't
have
think
to
they
be
have to be
verified.
So anybody can make something up if they
If
want.
someone's gonna go to that,
I guess so,
like,
but you know,
then,
I think you're gonna hear truth
yeah,
more than you're gonna hear something made
Well,
up.
I'm for that.
Frank?
So as a community organizer, I have countless firsthand accounts of instances of people being, negatively affected typically by unconscious bias. Nobody thinks they're racist. I myself have experienced it. I'm a middle-aged white guy, but I'm out and about in town and I'm speaking French to my daughter, and I can tell the difference when I switch from English to French in the attitudes of certain people around me. It's palpable. So unless you've experienced it, you don't know. I think it would be great for people to have the opportunity, even if it's anonymous, to express some of the instances that they've had. Some of the stuff that I've heard from people firsthand has been absolutely horrifying. And this is in town here, like in Georgia. We're not talking just surrounding communities here. We're talking literally here. So yeah, if you want to make a list of pros and cons, that's definitely going to be in the list of pros. And it should be, people should be allowed to do that, I think.
Could I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are these things that happen on the street out in public?
Sometimes in private, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's all the same. And bringing awareness of it would probably help to curb some of it. And again, like I said, this is not outright racism. These are all people who think they're not racist, but it's unconscious bias. You don't realize that what you've done or said might have made someone feel really uncomfortable.
And how do we change that? It's in somebody's head that, that this is what they see, and so that's what they surmise, and.
By accepting that unconscious bias is a thing rather than rejecting it. If you accept it as a thing, then it's a lot easier to recognize, and self-reflection is a thing. It's not a weakness. And I have unconscious bias.
Everyone does. Everyone does.
I've done some pretty awful things in my life that I didn't realize were awful until much later, because of unconscious bias. So hearing other people's accounts, I think, would be very valuable.
Could I see a hand over here after that? Okay, we're just.
I didn't raise a hand, I did just want to ask them to answer your question a little bit, Linda, when you say what can be done about this. This is why diversity trainings exist.
I'm sorry, I'm
Sorry, I'm hard of hearing too. This is why diversity trainings exist. It's so that you can go somewhere where a diversity trainer can explain these things to you, and something that you may not have recognized as an unconscious bias, you then are given the tools to recognize the next time it comes up. And you can say, oh, that's an example of unconscious bias. I didn't realize that was an unconscious bias because I wasn't educated about what unconscious bias was.
Thank you.
The final question from Bob is probably gonna spark some more conversation. Is Georgia getting more diverse? If so, how has this been accepted by longtime residents? I giggled the first time I read it, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm not a longtime Georgian. My husband was born and raised here, and I see the difference. And I'm a straight white woman, so.
But there's also a culture clash sometimes between longtime residents and newer folks that come into any town in Vermont, I was born in Vermont, but I don't lay any claim to fame because I happen to be born here. I visited a ton of states and served overseas twice, and so this is a place that I happen to live, and sometimes you do see those culture clashes, and they're not necessarily based on race or orientation, they're just sometimes based on, we've all heard the term flatlander, I mean, a million times, and I'm sure,
That's for sure.
I'm sure I've used it. And I've heard it used a million times, and so I've had racial slurs directed at me that aren't even appropriate because not even the right, if you're gonna insult me, at least get it right. So the reality of it is, I think that, I agree that we can't watch every video that's out there. We can't watch every YouTube video. I think that members of the public that want to sit in on these meetings, we don't want to be subjecting everybody to hundreds of hours of videos. I think that Marty feels very strongly about the John Stossel video, and I think in the interest of fairness, we should try to pick some representative samples of some educational material both pro and con, but on this DEI issue. Because there's just no end to it. You could watch thousands of videos and you could find videos against it. You could find videos for it. It's really hard to find somebody that's truly neutral. People will say they're truly neutral, but even saying that is almost an admission that you're not really truly neutral. So I think that I would absolutely be willing to watch the video that Marty has recommended, but I do think some of that could be done on our own time.
It's only a half hour.
Okay, and I'm happy to invest a half an hour of my life in watching a video. I've heard it brought up a couple times about people's fear of this. And I don't have any particular fear of this issue. I just want to keep an open mind about it, so that when I do finally state my belief, it doesn't mean that my opinion's gonna be right. I just want it to be something that I feel good about personally. Because I have to go to bed at night with myself and I have to
Yeah.
sleep tightly knowing that I voted my conscience. I think not much different than a juror, not much different than a judge. We do bring our personal experiences to the table. It's impossible to erase those. But I'm gonna really try hard to be as, I won't use the word neutral, but I'm gonna try really hard to be as open-minded as I can on this. And,
Excuse me.
yes, and I think we all should try to do that.
I like that.
And, the folks that have shown up for these groups, these small committee meetings are obviously very dedicated. And I think that having this public discussion rather than waiting till the very end, it seems like it's helpful because it seems like it helps to guide kind of the direction that we're going.
Mm.
So, if we're even going in a direction yet, I'm still really in the information gathering stage where I want to hear from everybody.
I agree.
And I think we all, at the end of the day, feel that way. We want to hear from as many perspectives as possible. And then if we have to either argue or persuade or try to convince other members of the committee to come around to our way of thinking, no different than in a jury room or in a committee meeting at the legislature, we'll have an opportunity to do that and the public will be included in that. And the public can put their opinions out there and I think public comment is really important.
I agree. It's good.
So can we, on the video front, agree that we can, amongst the committee, email links if you want to email them and share them with each other? I don't know that spending 30 minutes watching a video during these meetings is an appropriate use of time.
Okay,
So I
my only thing though is you're giving Bob Harnish a whole meeting.
That was from the select board. The select board asked us to meet with him.
Because I'm just asking for a half hour. But
And just
I'll
following.
go with whatever anybody says. I'm
What,
just one
what if
person.
what if we compromise here and you pick some clips or some parts of it that you would like to share to the group?
Or even write down notes. Like I said, I don't know that I don't wanna say willing, because I'm willing to look at these
Well,
things
how
on
about
my
this?
own, but I don't know that spending that time during a public meeting is a worthwhile use of our time.
Well, if I can just throw in an interjection, a public meeting is also you have a public right to leave the meeting, right? So if we go to a town meeting and it's going on and on and on until 10 o'clock at night, we do have an absolute constitutional right to say, bye, I'm out of here.
Mhm.
So I don't think a half an hour is too much to ask. And if Marty's video is 30 minutes and Bob Harnish wants to be given 30 minutes, if he thinks he can present the vision of why this is important, say in 30 minutes. To me, that's in the interest of listening to, maybe the perspectives are very similar. I don't know, Marty, maybe John Stossel in this video may be similar to Bob's, but I think we owe it to ourselves to listen to a few different perspectives.
Well, I think what Bob
You have a
Harnish,
hand up too,
is-
Janet.
Yes, I know.
it's gonna be a whole meeting. It will be a whole meeting. Right?
He said he only needed 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
We gotta have a hand up over here.
Yeah, I'm gonna make one
Sorry,
final comment
sorry.
from Christina. if we are gonna have Bob Harnish here, who we can talk to and ask for questions, and we want to see both sides, I would love to see if we can find someone who we can talk to. And not just, I don't wanna say just watch a video, because that sounds very dismissive, but I wanna be able to ask questions for both sides.
And that's
So
fair.
maybe even a representative from a town that decided not to go with it, what if we could ask them questions?
Let me think about it.
Okay,
I'll think about
get
it.
to me, email me.
Okay, I'll think about it.
Christina?
So I have two things.
Yeah.
One is on that topic, you could reach out to this professor and ask him if he would be willing to come and spend a half
Zoom.
hour via Zoom.
Good
with the committee,
idea.
So you could hear the other side.
Excellent idea.
Yeah,
So my second comment is, I have no problem whatsoever as a longtime Georgia resident, born and raised 50 years, with the senator from Franklin. However, I am a person of my word. So if we sign on to a DEI statement, how are you going to get the members of this town who do not treat people equally,
mhm.
accept everyone? How are you going to get them to do that? Because it's a piece of paper.
That's, you're
And
not,
a statement's not gonna do that any more than the speed limit signs are gonna get people.
you
to
can
stop
offer the
driving.
education and you can offer the activities, but you can't force anyone.
Right. So I just wanna make that, you know.
Yeah,
Tell
I
me,
really appreciate that.
what did you say again, please? Say it again, it was really good. Sorry.
It's a piece of paper, how are you going
I
to
have
enforce
no
it,
problem with
essentially?
the statement from that Franklin wrote. Agree 100%, but I'm a person of my word, so how do you back that up with education, getting people to accept, treat people equally? Because we are becoming.
Sorry, when have you ever gotten anyone 100% of any public or group to agree 100% on any issue? It
don't.
doesn't work that way, and that's not the intent of this. So I think we're being a little disingenuous when we're throwing those little qualifiers out there to say, oh, just because 100% is not folks aren't going to agree with this, it means we can't do it. That's what it sounds like. So I think it's a little disingenuous to come at it with that perspective. Sorry, I just had to say that.
I'm sorry you took it that way, that's not my intention at all. I'm concerned that if we do have people in town acting not nice, and not being accepting, how do we educate, train, so we can minimize that activity?
And yeah, that's part of the expectation with, Bob's group. So you had.
Okay. So this video that we've already been talking about for an hour, so I'm just like, I'm kind of like thinking like, why is this particular video so important to you? Because I sense that you're very passionate about it. And one of my concerns is that you keep mentioning that this is a Black man who is.
Man of color.
Okay, so a man of color. So it sounds like you're tokenizing someone who is against DEI, because there's many other people who may not be for DEI that you could get to come here in person to speak to us. And like, you could get somebody from UVM or like, not UVM, don't go there. I don't know, like any, like Franklin or like one of these other towns, someone who is opposed to it to come here and speak to us. But you keep mentioning this one video, so that makes me like think that it's something that you're using to kind of like push a certain bias versus having the discussion on the other side.
I was so impressed by this man. He's a college professor and
Mhm.
he was a diversity trainer. And I think it's a great idea to invite him to Zoom in and you should watch it. You know, it's really,
But why are you pushing this one video so much? I've only heard about this one and you haven't like it, so as someone who went to college, like you need multiple sources to back up your point. You only have one source.
Oh, no,
I would
I've-
love to
I've
see
looked
multiple
at-
sources.
I've looked at several sources, and the one thing about this that drew me to this, he was a DEI trainer. That was his
Okay.
job. And he felt,
So,
to be honest with you, he felt it wasn't working.
okay, so I've heard
And
enough
he-
about this video though.
Well, that's.
Like, I
why
would
I'm-
love to see other sources. I would love to hear someone come here and speak to us.
think
Like, I
it's
love
really
what you
good
mentioned about having
conversation.
someone come here and speak to us. I'd encourage you to seek outside of like this one source that you keep mentioning you're very passionate about, because multiple sources are really good for, you know, informational
Right,
on both
and
sides.
I've reached out to, I'm on my 6th town. So I'm reaching out to towns that I know, who have adopted this declaration. I've reached out to towns that don't. I'm trying to cover the whole gamut and be as fair and open-minded as I can.
Love that.
Yes.
All right, so back to the question from Bob was, is the town getting more diverse? The answer is yes, obviously, otherwise these conversations wouldn't be happening. Do we want to answer the, how has this been accepted by longtime residents portion of that question? Do we think that it's being accepted? Do we think that it's a struggle? Like, can we just say that it's a struggle and?
You mean because we're having more people come into the community, or because there are perceived DEI issues?
The question is Georgia getting more diverse? If so, how has this been accepted by longtime residents?
Well, diverse could be more
We have
younger
to ask that
families.
question.
more-
I don't know if we could have asked.
I don't know
that.
the
We
answer.
can't answer
That question is so broad, overly broad, it would be, you could spend 10 years researching that and literally still be wondering when you were done, because it's just, that question is so overly broad. And I would tell Bob.
available?
There is actually, and I actually have that
Yeah,
data
there is.
from the last 10 years. I pulled it up. I didn't print it out, but I have it in a document on, no, I did print it out, but I brought it to the last meeting.
I mean, I think
So I
that
have the census
first part
data
of that
showing- yes.
question, we can answer it.
Right.
Yes, we are more diverse. I
Yeah,
don't think we can answer the second part that says.
It
whether or
requires
not
an
it's
opinion, and you'd have to literally interview everybody in town, and by the time you get done interviewing everybody in town, there'd be 20 new people here and 20 other people that have left. You'll never accomplish it. What you can do is, the country's becoming more diverse. If you look at the demographics, the country itself is becoming more diverse. And probably the state and the communities within the state. You can probably just mathematically figure that one out without too much argument, but the part about how is that affecting everybody? And probably a lot of pros, and probably gonna be some bad stories, and people are gonna say, oh geez, I'm having trouble with some issues, but you'll have some other people that'll say, hey, I think it's great that I've got some neighbors that don't look exactly like me, and we've had a great time, and we're good friends. I know military service helped to give that to me. I didn't think I was a person that had these biases, but clearly I know now that I do, and I did. And it was very refreshing to get into military service where, you know, there were 57 of us, and you know, we really got a chance 12 weeks later to understand that at the end of the day, human beings are human beings. And I liked that about the military. It was kind of the great equalizer. I had people in charge of me who didn't look like me and had risen through the ranks by merit and not because of anything that had been given to them because of how they looked or their religion or anything like that. And I had subordinates, and I like that. I like that the military tends to be out front on a lot of diversity issues. And you wouldn't think that because they tend to be kind of a conservative bunch, and the military in general tends to be. But I kind of liked that, the fact that when I served, and we still had miles to go, so I was in 42 years ago, a while ago. But I like that, you know, and I think the second part of that question was.
so say yes, and it's complicated.
Well, I think we can answer the first part pretty easily, but I think the second part, I would challenge Bob Harnish to even be able to answer that question in his own community. Because I don't think he's got enough time in his life left to find out how is it affecting everybody in his community. I think he's from Rutland, right? He managed the Cortina, I think he's managed the Cortina Inn for 30 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, yes.
so I don't think he has any particular expertise in this area other than he's passionate about it. Fine.
I think the only way
Well,
you can,
I'm sorry, I can answer that question from my perspective as a Black man, as a gay Black man, and as a veteran in this community. I can definitely tell you that I have been affected by perceived biases of people driving by, yelling things at me. Most recently in a Facebook group where a member of this community liked a post of a person using a vomit sign in regards to folks in the LGBT community. And that is a member that's directly in this Georgia, Vermont community. So I personally has been affected by biases and actions in this community. So I think that it's not perceived as the members in this community that's happening. And I think that it's pretty alarming to me that folks are on this committee that have certain agendas, and as they're wanting to promote other speakers swaying an argument a certain way and saying it's one of the I don't know, a person of color, like one of the good ones, I guess you could say. And so I think that there are issues in this community. And I think that it seems like such an easy thing to promote and have, which is a DEI statement that's just basically saying that all are welcome in this community. How is that an issue? It's really just crazy to me that thinking that there's an argument about promoting a statement that says every individual is welcome in this town. How is that an issue? Why is that a problem? And I think that members of this community,
It's not
members
a
of this
problem.
committee should, I'm still speaking, members of this committee should, if they have a certain agenda, if they have a certain bias, like
Where's the
put it
statement?
out there now instead of skating around the issue. Like say which way or the other that you're leaning, so we know at least, instead of like promoting some of these good ones, a man of color who is biased a certain way and is in favor of whatever your agenda that you're trying to promote.
I'm not trying to promote any agenda, and I know you're referring to me. And that's okay.
I absolutely am referring to you.
I understand that. The Declaration of Inclusion from Franklin, I don't have a problem with, but what I have learned in calling other towns, that if you accept this declaration, there are possible implications for the town as far as expenses, as far as trainings, as far as hiring a DEI instructor. So that's all I'm looking at. And I'm trying to be polite. I mean, I'm just gonna say it, that was unkind what you said.
So I'm gonna move us on to the next section.
What did I say that was unkind? I'm sorry.
Mark, can we have that conversation after? Do you mind?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm gonna move us on to the next section, which is Bob wanted to know if we had any questions for him. It sounds like the questions that you had just brought up around costs, what it means for the future. Do we need to hire anyone?
Is it merely a statement, or is there a next step that is expected once you sign on to this?
It could mean higher taxes for the taxpayers.
Who knows? I mean,
Or it could mean less if we get benefits out of it.
Well, if they don't have any money left, like we were saying earlier.
That one specific one, yeah. I don't know what other
We
options
can,
are.
yeah. we
You
need to-
mean social benefits?
I mean, all of the above, really. There are grants that are available. There were, the one that I was referring to at the beginning of our meeting was run dry because so many towns took advantage of it with their statements, but there are grants available for towns who have the statement, and there's different resources available. So those are questions that I think we need to, as a committee, ask Bob about.
what did you say?
Okay, the questions for Bob: costs, taxes, grants, pros and cons. I also am wondering if we would like to open up questions to the community for Bob's presentation.
Sure. Do we wanna put out
That's what I'm wondering. Do
and
we
have it sent in?
to that email address?
As long as there isn't a barrage of questions so that he can get his
So I think that
message out.
it would make the most sense is
Would be
we
rude.
get
We
the
may have a lot of
questions
questions that they're saying.
and exactly, we narrow them down to what the most, I don't want to say most popular,
Right.
but the ones that most people have,
Prevalent, yeah.
and go down the list. If we put like a deadline of November 10th on it for, actually, that's really close to town meeting day. If Bob's coming on the 15th, could we do like the 13th, you think? 14th, give them a week after? So if we
I'm
have
confused with
questions, if Bob is coming on the 15th,
Right, didn't
What
he
do we
say he
want?
wanted everything by the
he originally said the
13th or 10th?
10th, but I feel like we can
So what
stretch
if
that
we
because
just-
the 10th is a holiday, so he's not gonna be at work anyway.
I have a housekeeping question, if I may,
Mhm.
Madam Chair. Would he be willing to come in person?
I can ask him.
I mean, I don't mind pitching in on the guy's gas. A message comes across better to me, and that's just me.
Where
In
is he?
person, and I think people who wanted to listen to Bob on Zoom could still hear everything. And could still be afforded an opportunity to ask questions after his presentation. But I think it'd be great if Bob could come in person, because I do think you lose a lot in the translation, and I think we got kind of carried away with Zoom and Skype and stuff during COVID, and I understand probably why, but the carrying on of it almost forever, I'm not a huge fan of. And
Yeah.
that isn't my bias, that's just my opinion, where I clearly see that sometimes people, it just seems to lose something in the translation on these Zoom meetings.
Where's Bob coming from?
Southern Vermont.
To get,
I was just saying, because if we advertise, at that town meeting, we wanna give people time.
I wonder if we could put a box there too.
That's a smart idea.
So if we can put a box there for people to submit
ask, yeah.
questions, and we give that, and we put that out, ASAP. And then we can have 3 weeks to collect questions, get them together and give them to Bob by November 9th, so he has time to prepare.
So I know that Bridget at the library had been open to being a resource at one point. I can see if we can have a box at the library and here. Does that make sense? And the email? Okay.
I just thought of a question.
Wait, before, can I just clarify the date, the deadline date? Do we wanna
I'd say the
9th?
9th, the 9th, so that we have time to
Okay.
compile those
What day of the week
and then
is
get
that?
them to
The
Bob.
9th is a Thursday.
Okay.
And if maybe just you and I meet, it wouldn't be a
I was
committee.
just gonna say, if on the 9th, you and I met up here even,
Mhm.
I have to look at the calendar.
And you're gonna put out on Facebook, how you're gonna get information out to people?
Yeah, so, in the Facebook post about Bob coming, we can include questions. If you have questions, email or drop off a note at these locations.
If you put a poster up in here, I know all the older people usually come in
Okay.
and they're not on Facebook. So if you wanna get some of that class to come in or ask questions, if you post something on the board, they're apt to see it more than.
Okay,
Used to be
Also the
great at the
library.
ABC
in the
store.
library, yeah.
Well, if we're putting a box at the library.
Remember
Yeah.
when they had that
We'll
bulletin
have
board outside and
information
they
there too.
totally blocked them? Because everybody saw.
So we'll just add that to what you and I, the draft that you and I are gonna work on.
I love the
Awesome.
ABC store.
I was just thinking of a question.
Yeah.
It just came to me. How could having a DEI committee in the community affect interpersonal relationships? It really can't. You know, two people on the street who aren't being nice to one another. This isn't gonna do anything about that, right?
Well, and I think that what we were saying before is all we can do is offer education and information to people. We can't force them to be nice, you
So
know?
there would be some sort of a program that would be educational for the public?
So
Is that
if
what you're
we
saying?
were to go with the statement from the Vermont Declaration of Inclusion, they would request that the select board has a plan to follow through on this. And how are they going to make sure that this is a welcoming town? Are they gonna offer activities? Are they gonna offer educational Saturday morning at the library, you know, like something like that? And that's on the select board unless they continue with a DEI committee long-term and give that charge to the DEI committee.
Or do they hire diversity?
Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, and that's more taxes.
That's really the
That's like a
purview of the
long-term,
select
yeah.
board, though, I think, the select board I think it's important that we don't do the job of the select board. If
Exactly, I agree.
we're gonna do the job of the select board, we should all run For, for the select board, and which I definitely don't want to do.
No.
So I really do think we need to really limit, our work to the charge. And I don't think that if we were to adopt a DEI statement, I think towns that have had negative experiences because they think it's gonna raise taxes and they're gonna have a permanent committee and they're gonna have to bring in. I think some of that's maybe some of their own doing. I don't know, it's just, again, that's just how
Well, and there
sort
are
of-
grants
Even if we-
available for those educational opportunities.
I mean, they can do
We could-
that, but I don't
we
think it
could
needs
also,
to incur
as
a
a-
huge amount of expense for a town.
Right, and
I
as
think
a
it does.
town, we could decide to put out a DEI statement and not necessarily go with
Mhm.
what this is. We could just put out our own statement, and our own statement is just
That's very true.
But that
because
would
it's-
what we
also be-
decide.
yeah,
and we
That's
don't
what
have to.
Franklin did. That's it.
That's what phase 2 is though, so they
Well,
don't,
and it all depends on the select board. If the
Right.
select board chooses to do that,
then
that's,
they can either assign a committee to write that. Or adopt it and look at those long-term impacts, or they can just go with the blanket statement.
Those are the pros and cons that you're supposed to be figuring out.
Yep,
exactly.
which is part of our question to Bob.
Right.
What we're here for.
So the homework part on the agenda was coming up with questions and figuring out how to get questions from the community, so. It sounds like we've got that under control with the boxes in 2 locations in the email.
Excuse me, you're gonna have boxes out in the communities for people to.
If it's okay with Cheryl and Bridget, have one here at the town office that people can drop questions in. And one at the library, and then also an email address if that's easier for folks. And we will advertise that through signage here and at the
We
library.
could ask the town to put it on the town website.
Yep, with either come drop one off or email this email address. And then assign at the town meeting on the 7th.
Can you put a little blurb on the box so that people know
Yeah.
what it's for? Because
Mhm.
you might have people coming in and not have a clue.
Absolutely, yep, so Heather
then
and I
you
are
might
gonna
have
make
to
that
get
draft.
more Responses.
Yeah. Awesome. In the light of our discussion and the next topic being one that Tracy had sent to us, do we want to move that until
What
the
was
next
it?
meeting, the social
was that?
media?
I think we already talked about it, didn't we?
No, but I don't know that this is the right setting without Tracy here because she's the one that wanted to add it.
What is it about?
She wanted to talk about social media and what was going on online.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Like Facebook and stuff?
yes.
Oh, yes, now I'm remembering. I'm like, what? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I- trying to be
Go back
vague.
through all those meetings. Okay, thank you.
It feels like it would be
I
better
think
to
that
have Tracy
she,
here.
yeah, I think
Okay.
that she being here for that discussion would be
Yes.
appropriate.
And I feel like we should have a conversation beforehand about managing that conversation, because I know it's going to have a lot of voices. And by managing, I don't mean making people not talk, I mean, making sure that it's a productive conversation. Because I know that social media can get pretty heated and I don't want it to turn into a brawl here, but we have Bob, so.
There's 2.9 billion Facebook users on the planet, and the reality of it is, it's like your own independent newspaper. And you can put out all kinds of stuff, good, bad, ugly, you name it. And there's a few controls, but a lot of stuff makes it out there that's pretty ugly, pretty nasty. And at the end of the day, I think we can have a discussion about the role of social media, but again, you could teach, 7-year, degree programs on that. I'd like to hear what Tracy has to say about it.
Mhm.
But I think whatever we do is highly unlikely to change people's behavior on social media. People
Yeah.
tend to,
Yeah, I would leave that.
they either mature on Facebook or they get booted off.
I don't think that it was, I don't mean to interrupt you, I don't think that it was a conversation about who's doing what. I think it was a conversation where the topic was something related to DEI and Tracy wanted to explore that.
Yeah, I think it
I do
makes
think we
perfect
should
sense
take
to have
over
her
her.
here to explain what she's looking.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's also 8:30 and I know that would.
yeah,
Go on.
right, absolutely.
The other time permitting agenda item was obtaining feedback from the community, but I feel like we've addressed that by doing the box in the email. If everyone's okay with that. Yeah. And then I had put time permitting unconscious bias,
Now, was it, Karen, you said you have somebody who speaks on unconscious bias? She's muted. Karen, you're muted.
You can unmute.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
mhm.
Okay. So yes, one of the engineers that I worked with, it's a woman, her name is Leslie Griffiths. We attended a lot of the Society of Women Engineer conferences together. So the Society of Women Engineer conferences are not technical, they're feel-good kind of conferences. We're basically aimed at promoting STEM type education to women, specifically to women, to encourage women to go into engineering. So because it's a feel-good kind of conference, Leslie at almost every conference, and she continues to do so even though she's retired, she presents a paper on unconscious bias, and she has these playing cards that go along with it that have questions on them. It's entertaining, but it's also extremely enlightening. I did get a hold of her, and she is willing to come in to the committee meetings and go through that if you're willing to sit in on that.
How long do you think that would take, Karen?
Normally these presentations were allowed anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes. If we put a time frame on her, she will stick to it.
I mean,
I
I'm
think it's
kind
a
of
really,
interested in to do it. I think that it brings in another voice and somebody else to just kind of talk with us.
I do think it's a really great idea. I also am wondering if, the note that I had written was, is there interest in a presentation? Because Karen had sent me Leslie's contact information. Or do we want to wait until after the exploratory phase? Suggested to the select board to do like a Saturday morning at the library kind of thing, so more people could join. How do we approach it to make it most productive, not mostly productive?
I think it'd be great to have a part of the meeting.
Come to the part of the meeting, I really do.
Okay. I can email Leslie. Karen had given me her email address, and it would have to wait until the December 4th meeting if we wanted to do that, if everyone's okay with that.
Is that okay? And then hopefully by then we can wrap it up. You look reluctant, Bob.
Oh, no, I'm kind of deep in thought. No, I'm just trying to think, I have said this before, I'd like for our work to be wrapped up within a reasonable period of time. That having been said, if we're almost there, I don't mind going another month or two. I don't think this is a 5-year operation. I think it's fairly straightforward, and I think at the end of the day, we just have to make a recommendation to the select board and let the select board make their decision on partially taking into consideration our vote or recommendation. But they're the governing body that were elected by the people of Georgia, and they're going to have to make the decision ultimately
Right.
about adopting a DEI statement or not adopting a DEI statement. So I don't think we need to go too deep into this. I think 5 or 6 meetings, we should hopefully be in a position to kind of take what we think is a vote. And-
Karen, sorry.
Well, no, I think, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, would Leslie be virtual on Zoom, or would she, excuse me, come in person? Do you think?
What would you like her to do?
Love her to
I
come
mean,
in.
I mean, I
want-
would love to have a conversation in person if
I
that's
think
something.
it's again, she has these cards that she brings with her, and doing it in person I think would be much better.
Okay.
I will owe her a dinner, but that's okay. She's a good friend of mine.
We'll bring cookies or something. And I think it's a great idea to have the educational part, and then after that meeting, we can make a plan for moving ahead with our suggestions, if we feel like we've gathered enough info.
Okay.
Anything else from the committee to discuss before we do public comment, although we've done a lot of public comment.
No,
Yeah,
but
we're
I
at
think,
8:30.
I think the public comment, if there's time, is a good way to conclude the meeting, so that everybody can be heard.
Does anyone have anything that they wanted to add to anything?
Public comment now.
Yeah.
I have a few things, so if you wanna go first, go ahead.
Are you gonna split that list up so you guys can not be calling the same towns?
I don't,
Pro and con, you know what I mean? The-
yeah, so now that everyone has a copy of this, if we email each other, if
Who we're
some-
gonna contact.
yeah, if someone contacts a town, can you just like email us and say,
Yeah,
and I'll just track it on the main, so we know who's spoken to who,
Sure.
and then double cross.
So I'm assuming you guys are gonna do that before the next meeting, at least try and keep July. Yeah.
That's a lot of towns.
Marty, you didn't know. I'm
done,
I'm gonna make it alphabetical order before I try it, because now it's in population order. But you did Milton, Middlebury,
St. Albans,
St. Albans Town and City,
Highgate.
Highgate.
Frank?
And Franklin.
yeah, I thought you did Milton.
I did,
Okay.
yeah, she said that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll cross those off on my list.
How many
and
is
then-
there? Is it 6?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6. Okay. Cool, and if we just email each other saying that we called someone, so we don't barrage
Sure.
people, that would be fantastic.
They're calling us again?
How many times do they have the same question?
So first, I had a few things that I wanted to kind of comment about. I was
Mhm.
trying to keep it to the end of the meeting. But first I wanted to ask, when you guys were talking about the question from Bob Harnick, what was the wording on the very last question, the second part of it?
Yeah. Is Georgia getting more diverse? If so, how has this been accepted by longtime residents?
Okay, I know there was a lot of talk about that being a question that can't really be answered because of people moving in, moving out, whatever have you. But longtime residents is specified right there in the question. And I think that by speaking to minorities in the community, whether you interview everybody or not, even just, I mean, hearing from Mark tonight on Zoom, I know that Frank also spoke as well on, bias that he's experienced in our community. I know that Donnie and I have experienced a lot of it this past week just on our own. I think that not wanting to answer that question is a fear of making a stand. That's the way it comes off when I'm listening to it. That doesn't mean it's right. That's just my perception. And it's my own unconscious biases that could be, forming that. But I think that, when you talk about, only limiting yourself to, well, we just need to do this select board charge, it's a little bit disingenuous, not just to the community, but to yourself as well. Because you can't decide on whether a DEI statement is important for the community without educating yourself, because it's not an informed decision otherwise. If you just make a decision based on your own biases and your own experiences, and as we've spoken of tonight a lot, bias is not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a fact of life. But if you make that decision without making an attempt to educate yourself, then it's an uninformed decision, and that makes it a decision that doesn't benefit the community in any way. I also wanted to touch a little bit, Marty, when you were talking about equity versus equality. Equity is not, B is selected for being B over A's qualifications. Equity is giving B the opportunities that A received to get those qualifications. What you were describing is tokenism, and they're two very different things.
As I understand it, equality is opportunity and things being based on merit. Equity is the same outcome, but you didn't do the same things to get the same outcome.
Right, but that's what I was just explaining. It's,
Okay, well, I get it. Okay. So we're on the same page.
I don't think we are, because I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. I'm sorry if I upset you in some way,
Oh,
but,
you're not upsetting me at all.
okay, well,
And I hope I'm not upsetting you, because I don't want to. I'm glad you're here.
okay. Continuing on, I know the talk of the survey has been brought up a few times. I don't really believe that it's against the charge, because again, I think it's part of the education for an informed decision. I think that when you're talking about the charge of adopting this DEI statement, there are certain things that need to be done in this phase one, so on and so forth. That might seem like you're doing more work than is strictly necessary just to adopt this statement. But I think we can all agree that every single person in this room, whether it's on the board, I mean, and on Zoom as well, whether it's somebody on the board or somebody sitting in the public, we all have biases that influence the way we think and the way we feel and the way that we experience life. And to me, I don't think that, saying the survey is against the select board charge is really necessarily true. And again, this is my private opinion, but I want to share it with you all to think about. Another thing, I had actually written something else down, but Jen actually said the exact same thing, so it didn't matter. Yeah, I guess that's all I really had to say. Other than that, obviously this was a very charged meeting tonight. And I think that there is I think that just the chargedness of this meeting shows that there's still a lot of work to be done in Georgia. And a lot of work for everybody to look at all sides of an issue, no matter what side they're standing on.
I agree. Totally.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I've heard the term disingenuous twice tonight, and it has the connotation for me that somebody isn't being genuine. And you almost have to read into their own mind and see how they're thinking. So you almost have to be a mind reader. I think sometimes what we say or what we write might come across as not being genuine, but in our hearts, we feel like we are being genuine. And I think that's where we all need to try to give each other as much latitude as possible, because most of us really don't know each other that well. I know this is really a new experience for me. And so, I'm sorry if anybody felt that comments that the board were making or that I was making were not genuine. They truly are genuine in my heart, but I'm certainly open to being educated more about topics. And I think that's, I'll leave it at that, but I think we have to be careful and just all of us, I guess, we have to be careful of, just being real super respectful of very diverse opinions. You're gonna have opinions on every part of the spectrum, and I think we just have to sort of listen, and then at the end of the day, we're all free to make up our own minds.
Well said.
But your comments are well taken, and I think we just keep plugging along. Jen, if you have to, I don't know if we just individually.
No, I was just taking a drink and I was like, I can't say.
No, that's
anything.
okay. Does it?
I want to echo Mark's comment somewhere, in his, when he was talking, that, it blows his mind that we can't just accept that a DEI statement makes people feel safer, equal, whatever, that we're even having discussion about the cons of one. And it does blow my mind too, that we can't just all be pro.
I totally agree. But there's more to it. Unfortunately.
I
Yeah,
think
Gary.
I think the perception is important. If we put out a policy, how many people in town are going to think that it is a law versus a policy? I mean, there really is no teeth. You cannot enforce. You can't force somebody to be 100% open and accepting of everybody, regardless of their differences. And I think if the town, or if anyone in the town believes that we are trying to force a behavior change on everyone, they're not going to go along with this, especially if the town has to vote on whether or not a policy is adopted. Was it Christine that mentioned, how do you enforce this thing? There really is no way to enforce it. I mean, you can encourage. Maybe having town events, maybe having incentives. I mean, if there's any kind of incentives that could be offered to businesses that are practicing diversity, I don't know. I mean, I'm in one of these diversity groups. I totally empathize with Mark because I am also part of the LGBTQ community. Luckily, I have never directly experienced any homophobia. But I keep to myself a lot. So, you know, I engage with my neighbors and not much beyond that. So I can't truly say whether or not there is a homophobia problem in this town, although from what I'm hearing, I'm concerned about it.
Thanks, Karen. Sorry.
It's okay.
Do you have more to say, Karen?
No, that's okay. I'm good.
Frank,
Alright, so I'm gonna repeat some things that I've heard from people who come to me directly about this stuff. One of the big issues with DEI statements from other people that I've heard is, and this is very much a media bias that is ingrained in them. DEI statement, they feel, is a gateway to things like gay pride parades, and to them, that's terrifying. You're gonna get a lot of pushback based on things like that. Also pushing an agenda and forcing money out of towns to fund some dude who pretends to be a DEI trainer. These are all the concerns that people bring up when they're anti-DEI statement. It's not just that we're afraid to say everyone's included. There's a very strong media bias, a media propaganda machine that is out there to convince people that these are legitimate concerns. And these people, they believe this with their heart. They don't think they're being hateful or racist, that they're having this fear driven into them by the media because of these statements, these concerns that most of them are pretty much made up, not relevant. These things that happen, they usually happen because the town is growing, not because they adopt a DEI statement. It's one of the consequences of growing communities. But that's the thing, these are the things that the obstacles you're gonna come across when it comes to DEI statements. It's not really some nebulous, oh no, I'm against telling people that they're welcome. There's nothing, nobody thinks of themselves that way.
Yeah, I mean, supporting the DEI statement could be perceived as supporting the gay lifestyle.
That's exactly it, and that's exactly what, like, people see on the DEI statement, gender identity, they laser focus on that. To the exclusion of everything else, never mind people with disabilities, never mind people with other challenges. They see gender identity, they're like, no, I can't support that. And these are tough biases to break through.
I mean, what the statement really is saying for me is I don't need your acceptance. I need your tolerance and I need your respect. And that's really what the DEI means to me as part of the LGBTQ community.
I'm not supposed to be writing all this stuff.
I'm taking notes, but no, you're okay.
Well said.
John has his hand up
I have
behind
two
you.
things. The first thing, I'll get this one out of the way first. When we're talking about getting experiences in the community, I know there's some concerns around anonymity, valid concerns. But also when people are face to face with you, like with Mark, a Black man in town, he was saying his experience to you and you said that it was unkind, which
No,
I don't.
I thought he was making fun of me because I used the term man of color. I was trying to be polite.
But so he was expressing his concern, and instead of hearing him as a community member, you called him unkind. Like, I'm not sure if you can understand how that makes him feel, like, and that is up to him to explain. But if you're expecting people in town to come forward with their experiences, you can't have that attitude with them. Like, you can't tell people that their experiences are invalid or being unkind, like you're here to listen. That's just my opinion. So anyway, but Mark can speak for himself. The second thing I'm gonna say is I have a great example from this week about how easy this process is, how not scary this process is, and how quick you can come up with a simple statement saying that you're accepting to everyone, with Pastor Tyler. So we had a little bit of a tiff over the past week with one of the staff people at his church who you had made an announcement about the Pride Committee that is a new initiative that you're working very hard on. And there was a homophobic comment, and then one of the staff at the church, Anger, reacted to it. So I
don't want to interrupt you, but I wanted to clarify. did not angry react to the homophobic comment, but angry reacted to the post that was just talking about an LGBT meeting.
Yeah, so that, so I reached out to that person directly, they blocked me and then it snowballed from there. So I reached out to Pastor Tyler, they would, just to say, this is something we're working really hard on. And even though it seems like a simple, like, oh, I angry reacted to something, but like everything else after that, it just felt like that was just like, that was not really called for, because I wouldn't do that to their church when they're making announcements in the public Facebook group. So Pastor Tyler and I had a great conversation. We're not at all on the same like team. Like we come from, I do have a Christian background, but I'm not Christian. I respect them very much. And Pastor Tyler and I had a great conversation. I didn't ask for him to make a statement. I just expressed how it made us feel. And I was like, so maybe just, try not to encourage that in your congregation. Like that just, makes us feel a certain way in the community. Like we can't promote our thing while you're promoting your things. That's not really equity. And Pastor Tyler took it upon himself to put out a very well written, like beautiful statement, really. And I don't know if you've seen it in our Facebook group. And it was just saying, it was calling out, it was talking about the incident. It was talking about how they were sorry for any hurt feelings. That's not what he stands for as a leader of the church. And I encourage you to go on the Facebook page and just read exactly what he said, because it's very well written.
It was top notch, so, yeah, it was on that one.
And the thing about that is that he's, I'm not like, we're both people who live in Georgia. We're not on the same, side of things religiously, but that was very respectful. That was handled very well. I didn't ask him to do that. And that was something that he took upon himself because he saw it as the right thing to do. And that was all within the span of a week. So he basically put out a DEI statement for his church, and not everyone in his church agrees with that. Not everyone's going to be on board with it, but he's the leader of the church. So he's setting an example, which is what the select board is doing with this. They're setting an example. It doesn't have to be like an expensive example, but honestly, I'm paying $3,000-4,000 a year for your kids to be educated. I don't have kids. But I know it makes our community a better place, so I'm gonna pay that. So like, if it's gonna cost a little bit of money for this, then, I don't think it's gonna cost a bit, because as you were saying, there are grants available that towns qualify for having programs like this. Then they're all over the place, even though the one in Vermont dried up, something else will come down the road. So there, that's my spiel.
Thanks, John.
Mark, if you're listening, I apologize. If I made you feel as if I was not listening to you, because that was not my intention.
Thanks, Maria.
No, it wasn't that I felt that you weren't listening. I think that, and there's things in the media, obviously, about certain in the point of bringing up this individual's race in regards to this perspective that, or this person's perspective on the DEI statements. So that's the what I was bringing up, and I wasn't really mocking you. I was just saying this man of color in quotes, because I didn't understand the necessity of identifying him as a Black man or a man of color. So that's all I was saying, and also to echo what John was saying about the Pastor Tyler's statement. I also don't subscribe to,
I understand.
to any sort of religion. I'm not a part of any church. What was that? Sorry. I'm not a part of any church, and I. You said I'm breaking up?
Yes.
You're good now.
Okay. Okay, so I was just saying the Pastor Tyler statement, and I'm not a part of any church. I don't subscribe to any sort of religion, but that statement that he put out absolutely moved me. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, and that's what a DEI statement is. It just makes folks feel a part of community, that it was inclusive, and it made me feel like. It just made me feel awesome. I just felt it was such a great feeling knowing that this person, this religious organization, this religious pastor puts out a statement as beautiful as accepting. And I think that that's what a DEI statement does. And that's what it can do for a community. So I just really hope that people take that in consideration when they're debating whether or not to put out a DEI statement.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I think the crux of Tyler's message was that we're imperfect, we're gonna make mistakes, and please give us the grace of learning from it. When it happens, because it's inevitable. That's what made it, so like he acknowledged that there was failing, that they happened, and he asked for forgiveness. And for a chance to, you know, let them show us what their stance really is. So I think that's what really resonated with people.
And you don't have Facebook, so you don't see it. Would you
No.
like me to send you a screenshot of it?
Sure,
Okay, I can do that tonight.
that'd be great, thank you.
What's on that? Any other comment or needs? Are we good?
From her, has everybody pretty much said your piece for this meeting?
Please.
November 15th, right?
November 15th, and we will hopefully have Bob here.
Okay,
All harnish, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Thanks, Karen, for joining on Zoom. We'll
sure
see you in
thing, thank
person.
you. We'll get to meet you in person next time.
Good. Can't wait.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.